everybody. This is Mr. McGibbon. And first of all, I want to say thank you for all the hard work that you've done so far in this mini course on community organizing. I've really enjoyed looking at your organizing statements. So when you said you were organizing who to pursue what purpose by theory of change to achieve an objective by a specific date, I really then understood what it is that you're working towards. Then I love hearing about the narratives. So I've been listening to everyone as they come in to hear more about the specific things that have happened in your life that has led you to have a particular value and to want to move other people to organize and come with you. That's super great. So I want to acknowledge that. That's been hard work. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about relationships, because everything we do in leadership is based in the relationship we have, obviously, with ourselves. But what I'm going to talk about today is the relationship with other people, understanding that a little bit more and the different types of relationships that we have. So you guys are probably, when you think about relationships, what do you think about? Okay, do you think about like relationships of parents and children have a relationship? Parents and grandparents have a relationship. There are romantic relationships. There are all sorts of different relationships. And so that's what we're going to look at. We're just going to look at two things in this that might help you in your organizing. And it's understanding, have a look at this slide. We're going to look at public versus private relationships and strong ties versus weak ties. And we're going to break these two things apart to understand a little bit more. And what I'll try and do is I'll relate them to our experience here on campus. So it might give you an idea of how these things sort of play out every day at school. Public and private relationships. So it's very important in organizing for you to have an awareness of the difference between public roles and private roles. Now the words kind of tell it all. For example, if you accept to be, say, run a club here on campus, you actually move into a public role. You work with that group, you have goals that you've set, maybe you have a campaign going, you organize people together, and that's not easy, and you take on a more formal sort of role, or there's more publicness into that type of relationship. Now, as a result of that, you have to find a way to negotiate and interact with students with whom you have a private relationship that's true to your way of interacting with them and also is more formal because you've assumed responsibility. So this is true not just at school, but this is also true for people that become doctors or lawyers or social workers or ministers or principals. They sort of walk the line between understanding that there is a professional role, that there is for a public organization, and there are private roles and relationships. Now, when you don't understand this, you run into a situation like this. So say you're running the knitting club at school and everyone joins and you think you're on board, and then someone leaves, but they don't tell you about it. And they're just gone and you don't know why. And the tensions appear because of that event, you tend to tell yourself stories about what they've done, and maybe they've done this, and maybe they don't like me anymore, or maybe they've given up on knitting as a thing. And then judgment could accompany that. And then what most people do is they don't confront the issue. They just let it play out. And they go, oh, well, they can make their choice and that's fine. So this is a blurry line between what is a public response and what is a private response. A private response is, oh, it's okay, they can do whatever they want. But if you have responsibilities to an organization, you're trying to work on something together, then your response probably should be a little bit different. It might be to reach out and say, hi, listen, you haven't been coming. What's going on with that? Because we really need you. So understanding that there is this dynamic, you have to work with it. And I want to give you an example here. And this comes from a community organizer called Ed Chambers. And it tells a story about what can happen if you mess up the distinction between private and public. This comes from his book, Roots for Radicals. By acting publicly in order to be liked, people invariably violate their group or organization's self-interest, usually by failing to hold public power brokers accountable at critical moments. What people need in public life is to be respected, which is similar to but different from being liked. This is why it is crucial to learn to act for respect in public, to be disinterested in being liked there, to look for liking in the private realm. The most recent continuing series of public figures who got liking and respect mixed up inappropriately was President Bill Clinton, who thought he could mix public and private affairs with impunity. Be president and just plain Bill. Prophets, visionaries, and ordinary people who value justice and democracy can't be too concerned about being liked in the public realm, but they must insist on being respected there. Now, this might be hard to understand because everyone likes to be liked. But one of the responsibilities that you may face as an organizer is to make decisions with your team that are unpopular. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it. That doesn't mean you have to be mean or violent in the way that you respond. But it does mean accepting the responsibility to take action when someone is making a mistake between private and public responsibilities. Now we're going to talk about strong ties versus weak ties. And I think this is pretty easy to understand. So when you think of your social network, people that you know throughout the world, generally they fall into categories of people that you feel are like you and people that you feel are not quite like you. Okay, so the distinction here that is made is that people that are like you seem to be strong ties. That's what we call that. And people who you think are not quite like you are weak ties. Now, that distinction is not that interesting. But so what I'm saying is how to use that is to understand that when you are organizing, if you surround yourself with people that are just strong ties, then that means, or people that are like you, that doesn't actually work in organizing. The research says that if you bring people together that are exactly like-minded, you're going to miss out on opportunities to learn, to grow. You're going to miss out on resources that they might be able to bring. So I recommend being aware of this, not just surrounding yourself with people who you think are like you, but understand that people that you have weak ties with have a hidden opportunity. And by engaging with them and bringing them into your organization, you find out that you will make your organization rich and create a situation where you seek to understand rather than making assumptions on what someone values or what resources or what they have. So what are relationships? Many of you have had relationships. Actually, all of you have probably had relationships. Now, have a look at this chart. It says relationships grow out of shared values, beneficial exchanges, and mutual commitments. So let's break those down. Shared values, beneficial exchanges, and mutual commitments. On one hand, when you understand the values of someone else and we can locate shared values and share stories of self, it can actually bring us together to find out, being great at asking questions of other people about what they value. Direct questions often open people up and you can uncover what you value together and what is maybe a point of difference. But that's only the start, understanding values. The second part is to look at the way of relationships as an exchange. You have certain interests and resources and the other person does. So for example, you might find out that they love basketball and they're good at being a forward and you're good at basketball and you're good at defense and running plays. So understanding that about each other can lead to building up your relationship. But relationship is more than just a simple exchange. If relationships were only exchanges, they would all be transactional. But relationships can actually be transformative. So your relationship in the basketball analogy might lead to a situation where you become better than when you absolutely possibly could by yourself. I was watching a documentary on Michael Jordan just last night, and Michael Jordan said no one should talk about just Michael Jordan. They should talk about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, because they became great together in a team, the Chicago Bulls during the 90s. And finding your partners, finding your relationships and nurturing them can actually lead to a transformation of yourself to achieve much more than you could alone. So you might understand what a relationship is. You might understand why it's important. You might even understand how different relationships work. But how do you create relationships? Have you ever thought about it? So have a look at this little chart. This chart talks about attention, interest, exploration, exchange, and commitment. And it offers a way to look at relationship building in a simple way. So first, you have to get each other's attention. You have to be intentional if you want to create a relationship. So you could call someone to set up a meeting. You could say, let's have lunch together. And you are then entering into an attempt to get to know someone a little bit better. So once you've got each other's attention, you need to establish interest in having a conversation. So if you say, hey, let's get together, let's go and meet about the football club, because I think there should be some great changes. So now you've got the interest of someone coming through in a very simple way. And this follows a period of exploration where you ask and answer each other's question, and there's a back and forth. A good place to start is to simply ask, why is football so important to you? And through that narrative, through that story of self, and if someone can answer truthfully about why it's important to them, you might understand a little bit of what they value. You might be able to ask them, from that story, I understand that you value teamwork. Too often, teams are made and people come together making assumptions about what they value rather than discussions about what they do value. So that's a really great place to start to find out common interests. Okay, so we have this period of exploration which leads to more exchange and more conversation. Then it comes to commitment. Now, without asking a commitment, you can run into a gap of just having a nice conversation with someone, and that's fine if that's what you're setting out to do, just to get to know them. But if you have a goal in mind, or you'd like them to join you in organizing, you have to find a way to ask something. It could be, let's do this again, if you didn't get to a point where you understand each other. Or it might be, hey, could you come and join my club? Could you come to the next meeting? I want to introduce you to the guys. So you see, conversations without another invitation don't often lead to good organizing practice. Now that sounds a bit silly. You might naturally do some of these by yourself, and that's great if you do. But if you don't, or if you're organizing, remember that to ask for a commitment at the end of each conversation and to explore values and motivations is a really valuable thing to understand and bring those resources to your organization. So you're up and running. You know what relationships are, and you've got a direction. What strategies do you use to try and bring people in to your group? You have your narrative. So what then? So one very, very easy way that you can do it is to just have a one-to-one meeting with someone who you think might be sympathetic or willing to join you. Reach out, have lunch with them, or have a chat, and go through this process of understanding more about what they value to see whether they might be a good mix for you. One-to-one conversation is a powerful, powerful way to ask for commitment on any issue. The second thing is to look at already established groups and networks. Tap into them. Go and ask them, What is it that you guys are up to? Is there a potential that we can work together? One example of this right now is Sissy is trying to organize a lip dub. Now, Sissy could do this independently to try and get a group together. Or Sissy could reach out to established groups, so maybe teachers, maybe science teachers, maybe the arts teachers, maybe different types of clubs. And in doing so, Sissy can tap into resources that are already there and recruit them to Sissy's purpose. Starting relationships is one thing. Understanding relationships is one thing. But working with people is always tricky. What I hope for you is that you engage in these sorts of activities, your one-to-one meetings. I will actually give you a bit of an activity in a minute for you to try out so you can practice these skills or recognize different types of relationships in the community. So as we go forward and you start to organize and you start to bring people in, it's important that you nurture and you care for people. You understand that the resources people have and the interests they have can turn into power, the power that you need to make the changes, positive changes in your community. So on to the task. I would like you to go to the website, and I've got a bit of a worksheet there to say, for you to identify what is a private relationship at school and what is a public relationship, and to look at the different relationships you have. Which relationship has strong ties and which relationship has weak ties? That's the first part of it. The second part is for you to organize a one-to-one fishbowl exercise. This means that I would like you to have a one-to-one conversation with someone in your buddy group. Now, if you have 3 in your buddy group or 4, that's okay. One of them, someone can observe this conversation and tell you what they observed. So follow the prompts, and through that, what I'm hoping you'll do is you'll practice establishing that relationship and uncovering hidden resources or hidden values that each person has. So I want to say thank you right now. Check out the website, continue your good work. And when you invest in this, my hope for you is that it will provide you with more clarity when you're trying to create your changes, and an understanding that why things could be challenging or why they could be difficult. And in that understanding, hopefully you'll have the courage to take a step, to ask for commitment, especially when you're organizing something that's very important to you. It's good to know. That's all I got. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you again soon.